There's opportunity there. We need to engage, and the relationship between these two countries is incredibly important. So we'll talk about that next. But in the meantime, Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for your testimony today and for your service. As the chairman and ranking member have both laid out, and as you have painted in more detail, for more than a decade, Syria has been a hotbed of extremism, a source of massive regional destabilization through migration, a base from which both Iran and Russia projected malign power. And today we have a narrow window of opportunity. It's critical that we get it right. No one should mourn the fall of the Assad regime of decades, but there is a lot of reconstruction and reconciliation to do. There are roughly 2 million children out of the school system, 90% of Syrians living in poverty. The medical system is in tatters. There's no real jobs or electricity or support. The agricultural fields are littered with unexploded ordnance and landmines, and entire towns lay almost completely in rubble. In these circumstances, a small amount of support can go a long way to rebuilding homes, trust, and engagement, to work on demining, to provide food and water, and this outcome really is zero-sum. If the al-Shara government continues to move in a direction that meets the strategic objectives the chairman laid out, we should be willing to engage with them, both indirectly through UN and international NGOs, and maybe ultimately directly by the United States, because if they do not get assistance from us and our Western partners, they will get it from Iran, from Russia, China, and ISIS will reemerge as a very real threat. But at the moment, because of the freeze in all U.S. foreign assistance, we're withholding exactly what the Syrian people need to see the American people engaging with them: food, medicine, education. We've even pulled away in the first days of what I view as a disastrous foreign aid freeze, security from guarding ISIS prisoners at the Al-Hol prison, although that funding mercifully has been turned back on. So, Ms. Troll, you know the stakes here better than anyone, certainly better than I do. What assistance should we be considering to provide in the interests of stability and security with this new Syrian state? And what are the risks if we don't provide some leadership in this area?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. First of all, I think this committee has played and should continue to play an incredibly important oversight role into all of the assistance, both the humanitarian and the non-humanitarian assistance going into Syria. As a former staffer, I can tell you we put USAID and the State Department through its paces, and I know you all are continuing to do that. My recommendation is that we encourage Secretary Rubio and the State Department to accelerate that 90-day review. All U.S. assistance should be subject to oversight and whether or not it's in line with U.S. priorities. But the non-humanitarian aid going to Syria is as important for arresting those drivers of instability that could sink Syria back into conflict and again make it a proliferator of terrorism and instability across the region. So in a post-conflict environment, the most important thing is local security and law enforcement, then clearing out the unexploded ordnance, then getting communities back, lights on, services, kids in school. All of this requires non-humanitarian aid, and it also requires coordination with others. We know...
To be clear, if I could, Ms. Terrell, while there are waivers for humanitarian assistance, there is no funding flowing. In literally the last 48 hours, I've spoken with the leaders of each of the major NGOs that implements humanitarian work around the world. Almost none of them, 98% of the programs that we discussed under things like PEPFAR, working to fight malaria or TB, to contain Ebola, demonstrably humanitarian. The money is not flowing yet because the aid freeze hasn't yet translated, largely because the key people who need to turn the financial system back on and approve the reversal of the stop work orders, they're not there. So not just longer-term development aid after some aid review, but the humanitarian relief is not flowing.
Thank you, Senator, for that clarification. I could not agree with you more. The loss of the career civil servants inside USAID, the threats of a reduction in the State Department staff, what we know about post-conflict societies is that reconstruction and stabilization are inherently political tasks. It's not something the U.S. military could do, which is why we need to get this funding turned
Could I
back
ask
on.
one more question, Mr. Chairman? I am alarmed by speculation that the administration is considering a hasty withdrawal of our troops from Syria. I'm concerned about the stability and the future of the SDF and of northeastern Syria. If both of you could briefly answer, what are the risks of a hasty departure of the U.S. presence in northeastern Syria, particularly vis-a-vis our hard-fought gains against ISIS, and who would fill that vacuum? Ms. Stroll, Mr. Singh.
The about 2,000 U.S. military forces are both supporting the SDF in keeping pressure on ISIS. They're still doing their own unilateral strikes, our U.S. military, against ISIS. They're also supporting the SDF, who maintain custody of nearly 9,000 ISIS fighters in detention facilities. ISIS is looking at them to replenish its ranks, and it's looking at the young children and families in the Al-Hol detention camp as ISIS 2.0. If we are not there to provide intelligence and support to the SDF, and the SDF are being attacked both by the Syrian National Army, the SNA, and our NATO ally Turkey, they will prioritize focusing on their own communities, and they will take pressure off ISIS. ISIS will then have an opportunity to retake territory and not only terrorize people in Syria, but direct transnational terrorism abroad, including against the United States.
Thank you, Senator Coons. And Ms. Stroll, I don't think you could have said it more clearly. I think most everyone who deals with this has a clear understanding of that. I don't share the immediate concerns you do about them pulling out of there. I think that there is an understanding of what would happen. Look, we have minimal troops there at 2,000.